it's a early morning in January. It's windy, it's dark, it's icy and snowy. It's honestly a pretty miserable winter morning. And a car is traveling down a road called Arrowhead.
It was blustery, it was a snowstorm, and that's typical for that area. It is in ski country.
This driver, a staff member of the Alpine Ski Club, knows the lay of the land. As he's driving south, it's pretty alarming for him to see a bit of an orange glow in the distance. This is really unusual. Realizes, okay, something's going on, stops the car, opens his door, starts walking towards this light, leans over the guardrail, and in the ditch is a car on fire.
Fire department, what's your emergency?
The 911 call came in at 5:54 in the morning.
Hi, there's a fire top of Arrowhead Road. It looks like a car went off the road. It seems fully engulfed. I'm not sure if there's passengers inside.
One of the concerns was, though, is that it's a car fire, and if there was a body in the vehicle.
And what kind of vehicle is it?
I can't tell. It's fully engulfed. It's down in the ditch, about 75 feet down.
And you don't know if there's anybody around?
I have no idea.
The person who called 911 was also a part-time volunteer firefighter, and he took some pictures of the scene.
It's like a minivan. I don't know if there's anybody in it. It looks like there's footprints in the snow.
Okay.
It looks like they must have come up and got out of the vehicle in time.
One of the things that he said was that it looked like there were tracks leading from the vehicle up out to the road.
Footprints?
Footprints.
In the snow?
In the snow. It's like a little trench.
There were some track marks in the snow.
As if somebody had walked out of the snow?
Yes.
My name is Ryan Martin. I'm captain with the Collingwood Fire Department. We were dispatched at 6:13 and we were on scene at 6:22.
Within a matter of minutes, all of a sudden this quiet country road starts transforming into a scene of intense action. Emergency responders dealing with a very sort of weird and unusual event.
By the time Captain Martin and his firefighters arrived on the scene, they estimated that the fire had been going for at least 20 minutes, if not more.
We were fully expecting to find a vehicle that had self-extinguished. Realistically, there probably wouldn't be a lot left of a vehicle that was in a free-burning state after 20 minutes. So it was surprising to turn the corner to see it still fully involved in fire. The fire behavior wasn't characteristic of a typical vehicle fire.
They had begun to attack the fire from approximately the top of this hill. It was difficult to advance the hose line just because of the slope of the hill, and they were dragging it through fairly deep snow at the time.
Every time that we applied water to the fire, we would blacken the fire down, and as soon as we stopped our extinguishing efforts, it would flare back up as if we hadn't made any progress at all.
It was a very stubborn fire to extinguish. We had both Town of Blue and Collingwood fighting the fire at this point in time, and the flames just continued to flare back up.
We did deplete our entire water tank in the process of extinguishing the fire, which is very uncommon. The fire characteristics were not normal. The visibility was poor around the vehicle. We were contending with thick black smoke, and we were applying water to the vehicle. We were generating a lot of steam, which impaired our ability to get a good look inside the vehicle. Firefighter Parks pried open the driver's side door and was able to sweep the driver's seat with his arm.
He scanned the car with the thermal imaging camera, as well as swept the driver's seat with his arm, which appeared to be empty at the time. That's as far as he could get into the vehicle.
At that point, there was a lot of things running through our mind. We were confused about the driver's seat being empty. We had checked with the drone in the immediately surrounding area, and we couldn't locate anybody else. in the area.
When they extinguished the fire, that's when everything changed.
118 back in the car. 123, 1019.
Approximately 7:09 a.m., the radio call went out over the air that there was a patient inside the vehicle. From that point on, the scene was turned over to the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police.
When they extinguished the fire, they found a human body. It was in the front passenger footwell. They believed at that time to be a child.
One of the fears that ran through our mind was that if a parent was driving and left the scene to go get help while the vehicle was still relatively intact, and then the vehicle took fire with somebody inside, and that was very scary to us.
My first thought might have been that there could have been a drunk driver that went off the road. The vehicle got stuck on the side of a mountain and it caught fire and somebody may have left. But we just, at that point, we didn't really know what we had.
You could see that there were track marks, there were road crews there, police were there. They'd closed off the road for several hours to figure out exactly what the path of the vehicle was, how it ended up down the embankment.
At the end of our shift that day, our accident reconstructionist experts were there still processing the scene. There was a lot of questions that we had and a lot of answers we didn't have yet.
After the body was found in the car, it becomes a more serious traffic investigation.
I don't normally get involved in fatal crashes. When I do get involved, I'm going to treat that death like a homicide until I can prove that it's not. In this case, we're going to use everything at our disposal. All our very skilled traffic investigators and our detectives to canvass the area.
When the reconstructionists are there walking in the snow and they step on the license plate, which got clipped off the vehicle, it gave us the owner. That's when we went to his house.
What happened when you knocked on the door?
In the Blue Mountains, you've got mountains to the west, you've got water to the north, you've got farmland to the east, and it's honestly beautiful.
It's a four-season wonderland. In the autumn, the colors are beautiful. The skiing in the winter is fabulous. The summer, we're on the Georgian Bay, and you can swim anywhere.
The Blue Mountains, which is mostly sort of a resort town, and then right next to it is Collingwood. And Collingwood is more of sort of an actual place to live.
It's a really nice place to raise a family, and you have that small town feel of kind of everyone knows everyone.
This is small town Collingwood.
1350.
Word travels real quickly about a death.
Police are now putting together the pieces after a fatal crash in Blue Mountains.
When they extinguished the fire, they found a human body.
There was only one body in the car, and they couldn't figure out who was that person.
When the reconstructionists are there walking in the snow and they step on the license plate, which got clipped off the vehicle, it gave us the owner, James Schwam.
Right at the beginning, when they find that license plate, it's entirely conceivable that that's James Schwam in that car.
James Schwam was a firefighter with Brampton Fire and Emergency Services. He was 38 years old. He lived in Collingwood.
James Schwam had a beautiful family. He was married to Ashley Milnes. They had two wonderful children.
So we got his address. That's when we went to his house.
What happened when you knocked on the door?
Nothing. No one was there. It's a normal Thursday work day. So after we left, we went to do a little more digging. I knew somebody who worked for the same fire department. So I called her. And I asked, what can you tell me about this guy? We've got a fatal collision. We're looking for a next of kin.
The colleague says, let me see if I can reach him. When she calls, she doesn't get an answer. And so she's starting to worry. And her next response is, well, I should tell Ashley. She calls Ashley's work and learns she didn't show up for work that morning. So now she's thinking, okay, what the hell is going on?
They were a popular family.
Absolutely. They did a lot of things together as a family. They were all both very present in their kid's life. Everyone seemed happy.
They call it $1 million family, I guess, where you have your boy and your girl, and they both have great jobs. They live in a beautiful area in the community.
James Schwalm and Ashley Milnes, who people called AJ, were both born and raised in Toronto. When I met Lindsay, Ashley's older sister, you realize this is a really genuinely tight-knit family. What was it like growing up one of four?
It was fun. It was busy, I have to say. Kudos to my mom.
And how did Ashley fit into all that?
She was just a bubbly, blonde-haired, cute thing. She was just this spunky, funny kid, full of life.
I know her nickname is Boob.
Boob came from Yogi Bear. Hey, boo-boo.
How about that boo-boo? Hey!
And so my father would call her that. And then we just started calling her Boob. The Boob. Yeah.
The Boob was always, she was always the center. The two older kids adored her.
She was magnetic.
Big time.
She loved life. I rarely ever saw her without a smile. Anything she did, she was incredible at. She really took to hiking and tennis, golf, you name it. She was a phenomenal athlete.
She was a fabulous dancer.
Her favorite artist was Whitney Houston.
So there was a lot of Whitney Houston blaring on the stereo.
Yes.
Was there a favorite song?
Or How Will I Know?
She would just let loose on anything and would sing, would dance.
A lot of people are described as the life of the party, but I get the sense that she was literally the life of the party.
Absolutely.
James Schwalm grew up in Toronto. James's family was well off. They certainly had money. He enjoyed the privileges of being able to go to a private ski club. Ashley and James belonged to the same ski club. Like Ashley, he would be going up to the Blue Mountains to ski every weekend.
Where you met all your friends and families and everyone kind of congregated there.
Social hub.
Yes, that's how they met.
Here at the ski club.
Yes.
Is it fair to say he swept her off her feet?
Yes. She was young and in love.
James was a handsome guy. He was a firefighter, so he was in great shape.
He looks like Captain America. He's a firefighter. He's a hero.
Look down.
He would do demonstrations where he'd be hanging off a bungee cord from a building. He'd be smashing a door down with an axe. And he chronicled it all on his Twitter page.
Very charming, very polite. What you would hope a young man would be like in front of meeting new parents and a new family.
What was your impression when you realized, oh, she really thinks he's the one?
He was very nice. He's the kind of guy that sucks up to adults. He wants to a good impression.
Your parents were married for 30 plus years before your mom passed. Do you think your parents' marriage gave Ashley a sense of what marriage would be like?
Absolutely. Unity. Best friends.
Ashley's was a fairy tale wedding.
Oh my God, it was so beautiful. It was her dream wedding. Literally, she arrived in horse carriage.
That's a Cinderella moment.
And she looked like Cinderella. She was the most beautiful bride.
You could just tell in her smile and her eyes that she was living everything she thought it would be, it was.
The Brampton Fire Department posted a photo on their social media. It shows Ashley's growing family. First a boy, then a girl.
She was making a name for herself as an interior designer.
So she was a busy working mom.
She was. She balanced it. She did. But her kids came first. Such a great mom. It just came naturally to her.
But where is that mom now? Or their dad, for that matter? On that cold January morning, investigators are desperate to find the parents, either parent, of the Schwalm children, to learn whose body was in the car. As police are investigating the charred remains of this SUV that seems to have just driven off into the snowy ravine, they're trying to figure out whose body is inside. At this point, the Schwalm children are both accounted for, but the parents, James and Ashley, are not.
We went to Ashley's office. And they told us there that she didn't show up for work that morning.
So that's an ominous sign.
So we're like, okay, she's missing. He wasn't at home. We contacted his fire service and he wasn't working that day.
He works for the Brampton Fire Department, and they do get through to one of his colleagues. And so she, rings him up, and he's not picking up. And so she starts to worry, like, there's been a terrible accident, like, maybe James is dead.
The detectives need to answer that question. And they quickly find out that James has a part-time job on the side at a repair shop. So the police head on over there.
And James was behind the desk when we showed up. Looked like a normal working day.
When you contacted him, did you know it was Ashley in the car?
We didn't know.
But you presumed.
But we presumed.
When you broke the news to him that his wife was likely dead in a car crash, what was his reaction?
He cried. He was emotional, distraught. Tears. Felt very bad for him.
I got to travel down to the Bahamas, which is where Ashley's dad, Ian, now lives. It's also where he got a horrible phone call from his son-in-law, the kind no parent should ever have to take.
The phone rings, and Jamie's at the other end, in tears, blubbering about it, and I couldn't understand it, and I screamed and said, "What are you saying?" And then he said that AJ had passed away. She was in an accident. And I screamed into the phone and said, "What are you talking about?"
That's a day that will be ingrained in my head forever. I looked at my phone and my dad was calling. And he said, "Well, we lost someone today." And I said, "Okay, who?" And he said, "Boob." I mean, I don't know. It was the hardest thing I've ever heard in my life.
At that point, we have a crash. We don't have a cause of death. We don't know if it really was just a terrible circumstance where the car left the road, the car caught fire, and she died as a result of the fire.
2 days after the crash, the police ask Ashley's husband, James, to come into the station for an interview.
These are Canadian investigators. They're going to treat you politely. They're going to ask you to come on in. Let's have a chat. Tell us what you know, what was going on.
Okay, so I got your coffee. Thank you very much. It was really a conversation to him. Like, James, tell me what happened.
What do you think about the day in the morning? Yeah, is there anything that stands out? Well, I know in the morning Ash was upset, and so there was a little argument in the bedroom.
He had an argument with Ashley because he wanted to go for a walk with the dog, and she wanted to do this hike at 5 in the morning.
Does she normally hike at that time? She normally hikes before work. No, she hikes after work too. I don't know. It was a bit earlier than usual. And when she'd go on these hikes, was she normally with somebody? Sometimes, but not all the time.
He explained that he needed to take the dog for a long walk because the dog would be left alone all day because he was going to his part-time job.
I don't know what time I left the house. I came back, and Ashley's car was gone.
He seems entirely distraught and emotional at the loss of his wife.
So what I'm going to ask you to do now, you just go back another day. Okay. And take me through Wednesday. Okay. Woke up Wednesday at work. When you say work, so I've got Brampton Fire Station. Okay. It was starting to snow. I ran out of gas for the snowblower. And I left the empty cans in the garage. I sent her a message just asking if she could fill them up. It'd be great.
He sent her a series of texts imploring her to go get gas for his snowblower. And there was weather coming.
It seemed like such a normal day. She was tired, and she made a comment that she was getting a lot of text messages. She was on her phone through dinner, and I just assumed it was work stuff. Okay. Okay. Do you know if she was supposed to meet anybody that morning? I'm sorry, I don't. So she maybe set up a hike date in those texts in the evening? You don't know? Yeah, she very well could have been.
Was Ashley texting about a hike where she was going to meet up with somebody?
In his explanation, she had plans to go on this hike. So whether that was with somebody or alone, I don't know how many people go out at 5:30 alone.
So, remember those photos taken by the 911 caller at the scene? The ones that show footprints in the snow. They're going to tell their own story. One that police say confirms that Ashley was not alone in that ravine.
James is talking to police and he's telling this story.
He had a text message that he sent to Ashley saying, I went for a walk this morning at 5:14.
That seems pretty precise.
Correct.
How did he show it to you?
It was on his phone. He had a video from his home surveillance system showing him leaving for his walk.
Do you think you'd be able to draw your walk for me? If I brought you a map, just to show me the route that you took that day? It shouldn't be a problem, yeah.
He was very cooperative. He told us where he was. He drew us a map of where he went during that walk.
X marks the spot. And so just walk me through the route and sort of just trace it, okay, if you can.
So he draws a map for you? What does it show?
It showed a pretty decent route through his neighborhood and around, and then him coming back home.
This is a family that is very outdoorsy.
So where was Ashley going? He said, well, she was going for a hike.
But with all this snow coming down, it being so early, that's kind of an odd decision to go for a hike so far from home on this particular morning.
And he went back to the phone again, and he was able to show a text from her saying she was leaving, and also to show a video of the car leaving.
So she sent a text saying she was leaving 70 minutes after you left, right? Okay.
James shows police a text from Ashley's phone. Okay, I'm going to zip out. I think the kids will be fine. They're sleeping.
You left for a walk with the dog. And then afterwards she leaves. And that leaves your kids home. And that's, to me, as a parent, I was pretty upset. And I'm not judging her, right? I'm just saying it just seems to me out of character. So can you help me with that? It was a bad habit that we got into. A little bit of the early morning stuff. It's only happened maybe 2 or 3 times.
That was really bizarre, that she would leave her young kids in the house alone to go for a hike. Like, that's just, to me, that's not happening.
In the dark, in a snowstorm.
That didn't add up to me.
Did you get that text when you were walking? No, I forgot to plug my phone out last night, so I plugged it in and just took Rocco for a walk. Okay, so your phone's charging at home while you're out for a walk with his dog? Yeah.
He said he left his phone at home, went for the walk, and when he got back, she wasn't there, but all these messages had shown up on the phone. So after he sent a text saying he was going for a walk, she sent a text saying that she was going for a hike. And a few minutes after that, she sent another text that said the inside of her car smelled like gasoline and she'd have to be driving with the windows down because she'd forgotten to take out some gas cans that she filled up.
So the other text, you know, when we look at them, it's strange. Okay, and it's about the gas. Can you tell me about the gas? Yeah.
Those are gas cans that he texted her to please pick up the day before, right?
That's right.
So I can't imagine driving with a gas can And the fumes that have been in the car all night with the windows open without taking those tanks out to sort of air the whole thing out. I don't know why she couldn't just take them out of the car. Okay. When we go to that next text that she talks about having the vertigo.
Another text from Ashley's phone says, quote, "Oh, I have vertigo. I'm going to rush home and try to do it. Work out in the basement."
Ashley had this inner ear problem.
She would feel dizzy, off balance, sick to her stomach. She took medication for it, and it would come and go.
And her husband made a point of that. Oh, she had, vertigo, and that may be why she crashed.
Could have been.
The text continues, "I feel like crap. I can't hike."
And then she was going to come home. And when he got back, she wasn't there.
After a 2.5-hour interview, detectives are ready to send James home.
He agreed to hand over his phone. He agreed to hand over the Blink camera system from his house. And he agreed to allow us to come and do a walkthrough of his house.
As a grieving husband would.
Absolutely.
At the end of that shift that day, we're left with, we have a body in a car that's been burned. We have a grieving husband. We have some interesting text messages and video as well on a phone that he showed us.
All his messaging that he showed us from her phone tried to set up this hike was important for a reason.
So it's almost like your spidey senses are up. Your gut is telling you something.
Yeah, he had the answers to all the questions before they were asked.
But Ashley's autopsy reveals even more questions. And the answers are frightening. How key is the forensics lab?
It's extremely key. It's going to tell us how she died.
We went to the site and got out, but we see all blackened, all the trees and the pine. So like you go, how does a car get on fire when it's plowing through all fresh powder snow?
For me, it didn't sit right. She would not have come out here this way at 5 a.m. to hike, like after a snowstorm. But she left hiking, right? So for me, it was like, okay, maybe I'm dead wrong.
So this is Arrowhead Road. It basically runs north-south. You can see there's a curve up ahead. Navigated that curve, no problem. And then the car is driven off the road. But what this crash didn't show us, it didn't look like a horrible crash. There was fire damage and some burnt, and there was some divots in the trees, but it wasn't a terrible crash scene.
If you walk a little bit down this way with me, guys, you can see there's still like branches broken. You can see the path of the car. Did you see the birch?
But you can still see the burnt trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how hot it was.
This whole mountainside was covered in snow. Were the skid marks evident when you were here? What did they look like?
They weren't skid marks. They were tire tracks just leading off the road.
When they said no skid marks, I thought, in an accident? Isn't that suspicious? Well, police thought so too.
Once the emergency responders get that car out of the ditch, they send it to Toronto, where forensic pathologists can take a look at the body and try to figure out, who is this and what happened to this car.
How key is the forensics lab?
It's extremely key. It's going to tell us how she died.
The Centre for Forensic Sciences is a multidisciplinary forensic laboratory in the province of Ontario. We do numerous different types of analyses here.
We have an amazing state-of-the-art building here, and we conduct approximately 6,500 autopsies a year for people that die suddenly and unexpectedly. The call came in to me to say that there was a vehicle that had been on fire and there was a body inside. Badly burned bodies are one of the most difficult type of autopsy to conduct. And I said, bring the car here. We have to put it in the extrication bay to extricate the body. Because you have to remember, when a body comes from fire, the body can fracture from the fire, heat effects. If the extrication happened at the scene, there would be the chance of, an open environment, losing important pieces of evidence. When I first examined the remains, there was a body on the passenger side. When we removed a sock from her left foot, the sock smelled of gasoline. It was not clear what the circumstances of death were. However, the smell of gasoline was somewhat suspicious. I wanted to know if there was any evidence that she might have inhaled gasoline while she was alive, if there was any traces of gasoline in the lungs.
So I was a scientific advisor that particular week. There were 2 separate submissions, fire debris that was collected from the car, and Dr. Bellis was requesting to submit the lungs of the deceased. So this is a mock-up of the evidence that we received, and Jasmine's going to show you here how we do the sampling. One of these items was a sock that was removed from one of the feet of the deceased. There was a glove that was found in the vehicle, which had an odor of gasoline. The testing is similar for debris items as it is for the lungs. If there are any ignitable liquid residues present in those debris items, they're also going to be present in that airspace above the debris item. Ignitable liquids are any liquids that are capable of fueling fire, one example of which would be gasoline. After poking a small hole in the lid of the jar, essentially a sample of air is drawn from the item. And inside that hollow tube, there is an adsorbent material. And any ignitable liquid residues present are trapped now on that adsorbent material. And so now this tube represents this particular item in the case. So we're going to go put these onto the GCMS instrument for analysis. So this is the auto sampler. Essentially what the auto sampler is going to do is heat up each of these tubes. At that point, it'll be detected by the instrument and produce a chart called a chromatogram, which we use for identifying ignitable liquids like gasoline. You can see a gasoline pattern here, which has a very distinctive look to it. Essentially, the results that I received is that the gasoline was identifiable in items that were recovered from the inside of the cab of the vehicle.
So it makes you wonder, did the fuel in the gas tank of the car spill out into the vehicle during the accident?
Typically, if a gas tank is compromised, then gasoline can spill out over the road and there can be a significant fire. But assuming that the car is a fully sealed unit, I wouldn't anticipate that gasoline would enter the vehicle in that manner. The results were quite interesting. My role is not to determine what those results mean, but the lungs themselves came back negative. Just logically speaking, there's only one explanation for that.
So while police are awaiting the final results of the autopsy, they get wind of another 911 call that came in the evening after the crash. And it's heartbreaking. It's from the teacher of one of the Schwam children.
Okay, well, what did she tell you? Well, she said that her mom had fallen down the stairs. And what's the mom's name, do we know? Her name is Ashley, A-S-H-L-E-Y.
So we came up here the next day. Obviously, to, be with Jamie and the kids. And it was a week of hell.
What happened during that week?
I mean, everyone was up here. It was a lot of police in and out.
We're all blubbering around and trying to figure, what are we going to do and all this stuff.
But it must have been total grief and shock and horror.
I mean, I don't like vomiting. And that's what I was doing. At first I was like, do I have the flu? And then no, it's part of trauma.
And I'm going, Jamie, I'm so sorry. What can I do? And he had taken the kids to the science center. He took all the grandkids to the science center from Collingwood to Toronto for the day to have fun. But that's Jamie. Let's get away from the mourning house and let's have a fun day.
It was bizarre because I didn't see him cry. At least not with tears.
With the car now transported to the Forensic Science Center, all police have is a charred body, a grieving family, and an ongoing investigation into what they're still calling an accident, at least for now.
So I left work and I went out to one of my favorite restaurants, just enjoying a hamburger and a beer.
And that's when the phone call came in.
Ontario Provincial Police. Hi, I was just wanting to share some information that a student gave me. I'm a teacher in Collingwood this morning. It's not sitting well with me today. I don't know if there's any way that somebody can do a wellness check.
And the Good Samaritan making that call is the elementary school teacher of the Schwalm's 6-year-old daughter.
The night shift sergeant calls and says, Jer, something's changed.
Okay, what did she tell you? Well, she said that she didn't have a very good night last night. She was woken up to her parents fighting. And then she proceeded to tell me that her mom had fallen down the stairs. And then I said, well, did you see your mom in the morning? She said no, that her mom had gone for a long hike. And what's the mom's name, do we know? Her name is Ashley, Ashley.
And this is a mom who got her kids ready for school every morning.
Yes.
Who suddenly decides to take a 5:30 a.m. hike.
In a snowstorm.
In a snowstorm.
Police were trying to figure out from friends and family, what was the situation like between James and Ashley? Were they happy? Were they loving? Was there infidelity?
On the outside, they were a shiny, happy couple.
It seemed like they had everything you could ever ask for.
It's like the usual juggle of drives and extracurriculars and chores, the usual things. Police have discovered some secrets, that things weren't as great as they might have seemed from the outside.
So you knew there were cracks
Yeah.
in the facade.
Yeah, I mean, but they were working through things, and I thought it was okay.
But then there's one thing that really sort of shakes their world up a little bit.
In one of her messages on her phone to one of her sisters saying, I'm all out of love, from Air Supply.
Yeah, that was one of the last texts I got from her.
It's very profound, those lyrics. What goes through your mind when you think that?
Heartbreak.
There was a lot of trouble in paradise.
Did she confide in you over that?
No.
Just as detectives are starting to piece together the Schwalm's past, a bombshell.
And he came up and said, did you know?
It was hard to grasp and understand what we were hearing.
How did Ashley Schwalm end up dead on the bottom of that embankment in her car, charred beyond recognition?
It was her body that yielded all those clues.
It was part of the aha moment.
And the information changed the whole dynamic of the investigation.
My alarm bells go off.
It's almost something you would see in a movie, to be honest with you.
There's a fire top of Arrowhead Road. It looks like a car went off the road.
We didn't have a crime at the time. We had a death that was suspicious. There were some unanswered questions about it.
One of those nagging questions was why that early morning fire was so hard to put out.
The fire behavior was extremely unusual. It was approximately a 9-minute response for us. So when we arrived, we expected the fire to probably have self-extinguished. But when we rounded the corner, we saw the orange glow. The intensity of the fire was not typical of a car fire that is already a half hour old. In a typical fire, it's relatively easy to extinguish with your onboard water supply, but in this case, both Town of Blue Mountains and Collingwood exhausted their onboard water supply, just extinguishing the fire.
We lost the whole inside of that car. It really needed to be looked at under an expert's microscope to see what was going on in there.
A forensic pathologist takes a look at this body, and she's trying to figure out, okay, is this Ashley's dead body by fire, or did something else happen?
I took samples of lung so they could be examined for volatile substances, including gasoline.
I was able to identify gasoline in all three of the samples that came from the vehicle, including the sock that came from the deceased, but the lungs themselves came back negative. Logically speaking, there's only one explanation for that. Perhaps the individual was not breathing at the time that the gasoline vapors were there.
In addition to discovering that there was no gas found in Ashley's lungs, Dr. Bellis has another discovery that's telling.
The alarm bells went off in my head. There was no soot in the airway, which indicated that she was dead before the fire started. If the body is dead at the time of the fire, the next question is, how did they die? In this instance, there were no ante-mortem injuries to indicate that she died from a crash, from a car accident. There was no evidence of natural disease to indicate she died from natural causes and was dead before the fire because of something naturally killing her. At the front of the neck, you have a windpipe, you have certain cartilages, and there were hemorrhagic fractures of those cartilages, so it indicated that she was alive at the time that there was pressure put on her neck.
I attended the post-mortem autopsy. When we were done at the end of the day, the pathologist asked to speak with me in a side room, and she said to me, "Are you a homicide detective?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is going to be interesting." I said, "Yeah, I'm a homicide detective." And she said, "Well, based on all the information, I believe you have a homicide."
Did the coroner have a theory as to what happened?
Yeah, what was interesting is the whole aspect of the daughter saying that mom fell down the stairs.
Ontario Provincial Police. A student said that she was woken up to her parents fighting, and then she proceeded to tell me that her mom had fallen down the stairs.
I immediately jumped to the conclusion that that's how she broke her neck. I actually said that to the pathologist, and the pathologist said, no, that's not how.
She explained to me that there's 2 bones in the side of the neck that can be broken as a result of manual strangulation or ligature strangulation.
So you knew you've got a murder on your hands.
100% at that point.
That was really a defining moment for me. It was, I can't even describe what a loss that was. And then finding out how. You think that she passed in a car accident, and then you find out that it wasn't that. It was gut-wrenching. And I miss her. Just her presence.
It's not an accident. This is a homicide. That changes our focus. What happened to make it a homicide? What are the circumstances? That's what we have to figure out now.
Now, detectives have to re-examine everything through the lens of a homicide, including those pictures taken of the crash. This is a daytime view. You can see the tire tracks.
The track marks go directly down the hill. There's no swerving, it's a direct line. It's remarkable that this vehicle was able to precisely find itself between the guardrail and the rock face and go down the side of that mountain.
They were able to plot the tires, the path of the vehicle. What they were able to determine eventually was the wheels were always moving. So no one hit the brakes. It wasn't skidding out of control. It was straight and into the embankment.
That car just drove off the cliff.
The key word there, it drove off the cliff. It didn't just spin out of control off the cliff.
And then rode down the culvert.
From the get-go, detectives were trying to figure out why the car burst into flames in the first place. Yeah, there were those gas cans in the back. But don't forget, James says he had asked Ashley to get the gas for the snowblower. There was a lot of accelerant in that car.
Oh, it was super hot, yes. And conveniently, the one window, the driver's side window, was down to add fuel to the fire.
Meaning?
Oxygen.
In order for the vehicle to sustain combustion, they would have had to have an oxygen source. So had the vehicle's windows been closed, there is a good chance that the fire would run out of oxygen before the fire was able to take over the entire vehicle.
There are gas tanks in the back of the car, but you also recover a lighter.
When they sift through the debris in the car, they come across a Zippo lighter. When it was cleaned off, it was telltale.
It had his initials right on it.
JWS, those are James Schwamm's initials.
When you saw the monogram lighter, what was your reaction?
Wow.
Wow, for sure.
A Zippo stays lit. You can throw it to the fumes and the gasoline. Great explanation for how that fire got started, with him being able to have some distance.
I know the lighter sounds like, wow, this is like this is a slam dunk case. Well, it is his car, and it is his lighter. So his property in the car, that does not make it a slam dunk.
You have an innocent explanation for why that would be
That's right.
there.
And one of the text messages being sent back and forth talked about the gasoline in the car.
In Ashley's text message, she says, "Ooh, it stinks like gas. I gotta drive with the window down."
Not only that, James also has that alibi. When Ashley's car drove off the mountain, he was on the other side of town walking the dog and offered video to prove it.
Police have discovered how Ashley died, but they don't know why. And so they start looking into her life and into her marriage, and they discover some secrets.
We have one other touchy subject to deal with. Sure. We've been told that there were some marital issues. Do you know who she was involved with?
Police have discovered how Ashley died, but they don't know why.
Police were trying to figure out from friends and family, what was the situation like between James and Ashley? Were they happy? Were they loving? And there were rumblings in the family that Ashley wasn't happy for years.
Ashley's family members told me that she felt sad and lonely after she and James and the kids moved to Collingwood full-time, which is 2 hours away from her loved ones in Toronto.
We were all in the city, my older sister and myself. That, I think she kind of felt a bit isolated, left out.
AJ didn't like it because she loved all her friends in Toronto.
There was something off, I always felt about him. He was controlling in the sense, he was very regimented.
In what way?
Just working out, everything he ate.
Everything is about me, how I look, how everyone perceives me.
Ashley's friends and family say she was unhappy in the marriage and she began to find affection elsewhere.
It happens when Ashley starts a new job, and she has a boss, a guy named Steve. And, there's an attraction there. She's married, of course, but they spend a lot of time together. Steve is married too, so it's not just Ashley. Steve is also cheating on his wife here.
I asked her after, and she said, "Dad, I was unhappy with the marriage, and it was a weak moment. And now that I look at it, it was just so stupid."
This past affair was something the police were already aware of, even as they're interviewing James.
We had some information, obviously, that there'd been an affair and the troubles that had caused, so we were aware of that.
One other touchy subject to deal with. Sure. Okay. You've been told that there were some marital issues. Do you know who she was involved with? Okay. Her old boss. Okay. And I understand that she was open with you about this affair? Or she didn't tell you about it? She got caught. She got caught by Steve's wife. Okay.
Ashley was having an affair with her boss, and her boss's wife confronted Ashley and said, "If you don't come clean to your husband, I will. I'm going to spill the beans here on this affair if you don't."
Ashley's loved ones say that ultimatum could not have come at a worse time.
We celebrated our 40th birthdays in the Bahamas together.
They were out in the boat 2 or 3 times, and they're drinking and having a ball. She probably had the most fun week of her life, and she probably the next week had the worst week of her life.
Because She got a horrible phone call.
She got a phone call from a wife of a situation.
It's while her husband is at the beach with their kids that Steve's wife calls Ashley with that demand. Tell James about the affair or else.
And so Jamie comes with the kids, and AJ told Jamie what had happened, and he went bonkers. I've never seen anything like it. I'll never forget that. His rage. It was a very cold, chilly week in Nassau, Bahamas.
James has a decision to make. You know, he's been cheated on. Is he going to say, that's it, this is the end, we're breaking up, we're getting divorced? No, he says, let's try to make this work, let's try to patch things up, we'll go to therapy, we'll figure this out.
What we heard really was that he could not get over the affair. And months later, as they're still working through it, he's telling people in social situations about what happened. Clearly, he couldn't let it go.
James's demeanor starts to shift. At work, he's a little more moody. He's sort of condescending to his juniors. And the same is sort of true at the ski club. He seems to be drinking a little bit more. I don't know if James and Ashley talked about divorce, but they were talking to their own families and friends separately and disclosing that they didn't see a future for this relationship. They were thinking about the end.
I said, so, what's going on? I said, you just don't look happy. She said, it's tough. And I said, well, if it doesn't work, get a divorce and get on with it. Just get on with it.
Did you think she should get on with it?
100%.
Why?
Because I think they needed time away from each other for Jamie to cool down. He felt slighted. He felt embarrassed. And when you're a narcissist, there is nothing worse.
Witness after witness said James was all about James. He was always worried about his public perception, his persona, how he and his reputation stood in the community.
As James and Ashley are trying to figure things out, James is secretly beginning to text Alexandra, Steve's ex-wife. And not just texting, but texting. And they're starting to flirt with one another and talk about, the aftermath of what happened to both of them. They've both been cheated on. They have something in common.
He confessed some feelings for her.
And does Alex reciprocate?
She had feelings, but she wanted him to sort out his situation. And he told her he had a plan to do what was going to make him happy.
A friend would later quote Ashley saying, "This year, I'm choosing me, my happiness, and the safety of my children. It's going to be the year of Ashley, and I can't wait." That conversation happened 5 days before her death.
He Google searched alimony. How much does it cost if you get separated from your wife?
For James, maybe he wasn't so thrilled by this because maybe it meant divorce.
He was telling firefighters, she's going to take half my money. I'm never going to see my kids as much as I used to. I'm going to lose my lifestyle. He's going to be falling way down that property ladder.
They have this magnificent home that they both worked and paid into it. Now that's going to have to be sold.
Ashley had a life insurance policy, and if she died, he would receive $1 million and an extra $250,000 for the kids, which would be under his control. $1 million is a lot of money, and so police took that into account.
One of the pieces of evidence that came out was that he was at a party one night, and James was talking to a doctor in town.
He said, I have some information I think you'd be interested in. He and James were both at a social event, and James came up to him and asked him, is it possible that you can kill somebody by snapping their neck like in a Steven Seagal movie?
He was trying to figure out, would he get caught? How can I pull this off with limited evidence being traced back to me? The best tool that police have in solving crimes is the cell phone of a person, because that is a window into their mind.
He sent her a series of texts imploring her to go get gas because he was out of gas for his snowblower.
But you have video suggesting otherwise.
I don't think it's suggesting. I think it's showing absolute otherwise.
James thinks of his phone as part of his alibi. He has this text message evidence and these videos, but when the police eventually get it and they look through it, they realize it's actually very damning for him.
After the collision and the death initially, he was completely cooperative with us. He told us where he was. He agreed to hand over his phone.
Do you mind if I take the phone? Of course.
He's got a pretty bad search history. He searched, can a road flare completely burn?
He Google searched, can police see what's on your phone after it's been deleted?
And he found out that the answer is yes.
James had cameras all over his home. He had dash cam video. So it was pretty easy for investigators to figure out where he was, when he was there, how long he was there for, and where he had been in the days and hours surrounding Ashley's death.
On the morning of January 25th, 2023, James finishes up one of his usual 24-hour firefighting shifts.
At about 8 o'clock in the morning, he sent her a series of texts imploring her to go get gas because he was out of gas for his snowblower, and there was weather coming. And then in those text messages to Ashley, he said, I forgot to bring the gas can. Can you please go fill it up?
But you have video suggesting otherwise.
I don't think it's suggesting. I think it's showing absolutely otherwise.
Jeremy ended up finding dash camera video from his motor vehicle that he had of what I call a recce of him driving the route that he was going to take.
So on the 25th, he takes his daughter to a riding lesson.
The police say he drives out to the Alpine Ski Club parking lot just to sort of scope it out. And he's got his son in the car with him.
At first glance, the video seems innocent. James doing errands with his son in the back seat. But when the whole picture becomes clear, investigators realize that this is part of his elaborate plan to cover up a murder.
Part of his planning was also that he needed a snowstorm. He needed a snowstorm to fit what he was doing. I think partly because you need to account for a car accident. And if you've got slippery roads and the visibility's poor, that speaks to it. Also, part of the planning is not as many vehicles are out on the roadway when you have a big snowstorm.
Which brings us to the early morning of that fateful day, January 26th. You can see James taking his dog out for a walk on his security camera, just like he told the police.
She got mentioned that she had plans in school for runner hiding before work. For her to plug my phone in and listen to those, so I just went to the kitchen, plugged it in, and then got dressed and took off for a walk.
So don't forget, James was asked by the police to draw a map of the route that he walked his dog.
We thought, okay, let's find him walking the dog. That would be a great alibi for him. If he's out and about, whether we find people or a video of him, that would really say he's not out at the crash site.
So we went in front of the house there and we walked his route.
So basically this dog walk was James's entire alibi.
Yes, we came out here and we walked the route that he gave us.
You walked this walk?
We walked this walk. Jeremy'd walk on the sidewalk and I'd walk on the road just to be able to account for his possible whereabouts.
So at this point, police start asking homeowners, hey, can we see your security footage? Can we see your doorbell footage?
And so you knew that there'd be cameras on that route?
There's cameras everywhere today.
It's a typical thing that we do. Like that is 101 in policing, is to do a canvass and talk to people and see if we can find video.
Corroborate the alibi.
Correct.
And so how many cameras picked you up?
So we got picked up on, I think, about 8 cameras.
Oh man, that's a lot.
The officers retraced James's steps, but what they found was where James said he had walked, he never appeared on any of those cameras.
8 cameras that did not pick up James.
Correct. Nobody picked him up.
He's a ghost.
He didn't exist here.
We referred to it the walk that wasn't.
Also absent on the security camera is any video of James returning from the dog walk. What is seen on the camera is Ashley's Mitsubishi SUV pulling out of the driveway.
James was telling police that Ashley went on her hike and took their car,
making a right-hand turn and heading out to where it was going the right direction. You can't see the driver, you can't see who's in the passenger, you can't see what's in the back.
Which is perfect for him.
What do you know to be happening in that video?
He went for the dog walk. I think he just walked up the road, disarmed his camera, walked back in, reactivated his camera, and then drove the vehicle out of the garage and turned right and then headed his way up to the mountain.
With his wife's
With
body.
his wife's body in the car.
The video evidence is damning, to be sure, but cases tend to turn on first-person accounts from a witness. And now, investigators are about to hear a story from the Schwam's 9-year-old son about the last time he saw his mother. She asked for a phone from her son that night to call 911.
Yep. She knew she was in trouble then. 100%.
It's a little bit snowy, but on the day it happened, there was a lot more snow on the ground.
Most of our region is under a snowfall warning tonight as 15 to 20 centimeters of snow.
A lot of media giving people warning about this huge storm front, and it came.
It's still quiet in the early morning hours of January 26th, but not at the Schwam house. So explain to me where he was coming from and where he's going to.
We left his house. He took a couple of rural roads to get out into the town of the Blue Mountains. He went and parked the car in the Alpine Ski Club where he prepared the car and Ashley's body with the gasoline.
That's what we believe, yeah. That's when he did it. Because it was just around the corner from where the crash site is.
And then he drove a couple hundred meters down to this site here. After driving into the ditch, he got out, she's on the passenger side, and he lights the fire with that Zippo. And then he starts running this way, and we have him on video 300 meters up the road, running.
That's when he becomes the running man.
The running man.
Well, we refer to him as the running man. It's almost something you would see in a movie, to be honest with you.
Detectives are now convinced that this shadowy figure wearing a backpack and running across the frame is James. And in the background, you see that eerie glow. It's the car on fire with Ashley's body inside.
It was a very large fire.
So he knew how to build a hot fire.
He's a firefighter.
Given how destroyed the car is, this is a pretty good testament to how well Zippos perform under pressure.
It was metal, and the metal is what survived this crash. So when it was cleaned up, it was a pointer in that direction.
What is on the back of here, do you know? It looks like a number.
Looks like his badge number from work. He's, using his own lighter with his own badge number from the fire department that he worked for.
This is quite a calling card.
Throughout this entire time, maybe an hour, James has left his kids entirely alone at home.
The SUV that James drove into the ravine is now on fire, and home is 10 miles away, too far to get there on foot. That's why detectives say the day before, James had already come up with a plan that involved deceiving his own mother.
He lied to his mother to facilitate the getaway vehicle. for him to get from the crash scene to home. They told her he needed to borrow the car because he was going on a big hike and he needed a ride home.
And he made arrangements to get that car later that day.
He borrows his mom's car, he takes it to the ski club, and he parks it at the parking lot there.
He makes sure that mom's car's pre-positioned for the next morning to take him back to Collingwood after he's staged the crash and the fire.
James runs to the parking lot, he gets in his mom's car, starts it up, and starts driving home. He doesn't park in his driveway because he knows that's going to invite some questions from the kids. Why do we have Grandma's car? So he goes to the nearby school and parks it there and goes the rest of the way home from there.
How important was the video surveillance in helping you piece together this puzzle?
It was crucial. It allowed us to track that car right back to the school. It allowed us to track him then leaving the school where he parked mom's car.
Police also comb through James's social media, and they find a clue that's hiding in plain sight.
We'd seen on social media that he had participated in a number of charity events, and he would wear a bunker suit, which is the protective gear that firefighters wear.
So you think he was wearing that as he drove himself off the cliff?
And we think he wore that so he didn't get burned or hurt when he's crashing the car or setting the fire.
While those pieces of evidence are great, that pales in comparison to the evidence given by a witness on the scene of a murder.
Let's go back to the night of the murder. The son also was an ear witness to something.
He was, and Ashley actually asked him to bring her a phone, and he did. She wanted to call the police because they had been fighting. He heard the commotion and them moving down the stairs. Fortunately, she was able to make that call to police that she said she wanted to do. Later in the morning, he came down and James said that mom had gone for a walk with the dog, but he could see the dog in the back room.
So father was lying.
He knew that he was being lied to. It's horrific. He exposed them to something absolutely terrible that would affect them for the rest of their lives.
So all those messages that you were reading on Ashley's phone, who actually sent those texts?
So they were messages that James sent using Ashley's phone.
But he wanted you to see them because he was laying those breadcrumbs for you.
He needed us to see them. He needed Ashley to tell us what happened because it's far more compelling than him telling us what happened.
Detectives are convinced they have enough evidence to arrest James for Ashley's murder, but they're afraid that tipping him off might cause even more harm.
We had a lot of concerns about the safety of the children. If it becomes known that we're looking into him, what could he do?
This story is about a man who had everything in his life handed to him. The perfect marriage, the perfect family, the perfect career, a hero in the community, and he burned it all to the ground.
There was real concern that James might be dangerous, especially with regard to the kids.
Absolutely. Until we had the evidence, the grounds to arrest him, he's out there. He has access to the children. He's driving around with the kids. It was a big concern.
We made the right decision to protect the children, and we didn't want to show our hand in that moment that we were actually looking at him for the possibility of murder. We wanted everybody to believe we're still investigating this car crash.
We knew he was out driving with some family members. We had surveillance on him. And as he returned home, he was stopped, and I arrested him.
And what was his reaction?
Jeremy. How can I help you? What do you need? He was hoping, I think, that this would just somehow go away still.
It took 8 days for police to arrest James Schwamm. He is charged with first-degree murder. First-degree murder in Canada is 25 years. You cannot apply for parole until 25 years into your sentence. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get out at 25 years.
The case now makes its way directly to the Superior Court of Justice. The allegations against James Schwamm have not been tested in court.
How did it hit this community?
I think it, surprised and saddened an entire community. It can happen in your backyard.
People were shocked. They were devastated. A lot of people knew her, and they knew us because we'd been there for 40, 50 years.
But here's the thing, in order for prosecutors to be able to put out the strongest case, they're going to have to call as witnesses James and Ashley's young son and daughter. Is that something you wanted to avoid?
Well, it's not something we ever want. Sometimes it's unfortunately necessary.
Were you worried about a drawn-out trial?
If it was gonna serve justice for my sister, I would have stayed on it for 20 years. Yeah.
Why did you not want those kids to take the stand?
Just their whole world in a one evening was ripped away from them. No mom, no dad. And then having to go on the stand and stare at your dad, who's killed your mom? Like, absolutely not.
2 or 3 months later, James Schwamm is appearing from jail, and I'm watching his court appearance. And I hear that he is going to be in the Superior Court of Justice, pleading guilty to second-degree murder. I asked his lawyer, do you have any comment right now? She said,
So my client did the right thing. We're hoping that this gives the family some closure. Even
I had a chill run down my spine, because at that moment I realized it's over. He was guilty. Guilty as sin.
There was an agreed statement of fact, and he did agree that she was strangled. And that he set her and the car on fire.
We agreed that he dressed her in hiking clothing beforehand.
This is a level of premeditation that really eliminates any idea that this was a crime of passion.
100%.
In order to decide what James's sentence should be, there was a hearing in the courthouses, and plenty of Ashley's family and friends showed up and submitted 21 victim impact statements, talking about holes in their hearts and how this crime had just shattered their community.
I just wanted people to know that she's not a victim. She was my sister. She was a mom. She was an aunt. There were so many people that loved her. And I just wanted that to be known.
That courthouse was sad. That courthouse was somber, and I'm sure for some of them it was a good feeling to be able to tell the courts and to tell the public just what they loved about Ashley. But I'm also sure for some of them it was just another painful experience.
What was your statement to him?
That you tried to get away with something, and we're not stupid, we caught you.
The judge ultimately sentenced James to life in prison. He did not look at the crowd once. He gave a short statement. He said essentially, I'm sorry for my terrible actions, and I want to return to the man that I once was, but this is the fate that I deserve.
Do you think he had remorse? Did he express it?
It was in court. I didn't really hear it. If somebody's remorseful, you really don't question that. You see it. and hear it.
But you didn't see it?
From my opinion, no. Obviously, he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. He made mistakes, and we had good police officers, good detectives that made decisions and were meticulous in collecting evidence to show that he did what he did.
One bright spot in this story is that Ashley's family wanted to honor her by partnering with a domestic violence shelter, which helps so many women. It's called My Friend's House.
Obviously, because of the circumstances, she never had a proper funeral that was public. It became clear quickly we need to do a hike.
Ashley's celebration of life, they waited till a lot of the legal proceedings and things were done so that they could be on the other side of that to make it just about her, and it was beautiful.
What do you want people to remember about Ashley?
She had the kindest heart, and I hope everyone can get a sense of who she was. Her smile, her love for life was unmatched.
She was so incredible. No one could replace her. I mean, am I happy now that I know she's with my mom? Yeah. But she is terribly missed.
Victorian home with spacious wraparound porches and a majestic willow tree. They named the property Paradise Ranch, reflecting Nancy's spiritual hope. After Robert's sudden and tragic passing from a heart attack, Nancy lived alone on the property, eventually choosing to utilize the main Victorian home as a vacation rental while she resided in a cozy, converted studio apartment on the estate. In May of 2018, Nancy decided to sell Paradise Ranch. The maintenance of the large property had become overwhelming, and she wished to dedicate her time fully to her spiritual ministry, teaching others about the Bible. To prepare the home for sale, she had hired several local contractors, painters, and tradesmen to perform necessary repairs and renovations. On Friday, May 4th, 2018, a large wedding party consisting of more than 20 guests checked into Paradise Ranch to celebrate a vineyard wedding at a local winery. The bride and her bridesmaids were staying in the guest house and main Victorian home. Nancy welcomed them warmly, introducing herself and offering a hug before retiring to her studio apartment, which was separated from the main guest quarters by a single wall. The following morning, Saturday, May 5th, Amanda became deeply concerned when her mother failed to arrive for a scheduled Bible study. Such an absence was completely contrary to Nancy's disciplined and devoted nature. Amanda contacted her mother's neighbor, asking her to check on the apartment. When a neighbor arrived, she found a scene that was immediately alarming. The front door of Nancy's studio was wide open, the television was blaring, and Nancy was nowhere to be found. Amanda rushed to the property, and upon entering the apartment, her worst fears were realized. On the floor lay two large, dark stains that appeared to be blood. The sheets and bedding from Nancy's bed were missing, and the bedroom walls and headboard were marked with a fine pattern of blood spatter. On a bench near the door sat Nancy's purse, her car keys, her cell phone, and her iPad, indicating she had not left the home voluntarily. Amanda immediately called 911 to report her mother missing under highly suspicious circumstances. Senior Deputy Degnan and other officers from the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office arrived quickly at the scene. They were joined by Reserve Detective Clinton Cole, who was assigned to investigate the disappearance. From his first steps into the cottage, Detective Cole recognized that the space was a crime scene. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Nancy may have been surprised in her sleep or had opened the door to someone she recognized. As the forensic team began documenting the scene, they noted several critical details. A beige pillow resting on the bed featured a significant blood stain, and upon closer inspection from atop a ladder, a forensic technician identified a faint, partial print of a hand within the blood. This suggested the pillow may have been used as a weapon to smother or suffocate the victim. The investigators swabbed the bloody handprint for foreign deoxyribonucleic acid and sent it to the state laboratory for urgent analysis. That evening, the investigation received a significant lead. Officers from the California Highway Patrol discovered a bundle of bedding and women's clothing discarded on the side of La Ponza Road, approximately 6 miles from Nancy's home. The items included a gingham print sheet that matched the remaining bedding in Nancy's room, a dress, a pair of shorts, and shirt. The clothing and bedding were heavily stained with blood. Amanda confirmed that the items belonged to her mother, solidifying the theory that Nancy had been severely injured and transported away from her home against her will. The presence of over 20 wedding guests on the property created a highly complex investigative challenge. These individuals had ready access to the estate and represented an immediate pool of potential suspects. Detective Cole and his team spent hours interviewing every guest, seeking to establish a detailed timeline of their movements. The wedding party had attended a rehearsal dinner at a local winery on Friday evening, returning to Paradise Ranch around 10:30 in the evening and retiring to bed by midnight. The bride, sleeping in the guest room directly adjacent to Nancy's apartment, had worn earplugs and reported hearing absolutely nothing during the night. One guest, however, initially raised suspicions due to his inconsistent statements regarding whether he had attended the dinner or remained alone on the property. When investigators attempted to follow up with him, he became defensive and uncooperative. Seeking to resolve this red flag, Detective Cole and his partner traveled to the man's residence in Northern California. Upon their arrival, the guest's attitude had changed. He was highly cooperative, provided photograph evidence confirming his presence at the rehearsal dinner, and voluntarily provided a deoxyribonucleic acid sample, which successfully cleared him of any involvement. With the wedding guests eliminated as suspects, investigators focused on the numerous contractors who had worked on the property. Amanda identified 2 individuals of interest. The first was Sean Bloom, a general contractor who had recently been fired by Nancy after a heated dispute over the quality of his work. And outstanding payments. Bloom had threatened legal action, and his animosity toward Nancy was well documented in a series of tense text messages. The second individual was Carlo Fuentes Flores, a 38-year-old local painter who had spent several weeks painting the exterior decks and trim of the main Victorian home. When initially contacted by telephone, Fuentes Flores was highly polite and cooperative, expressing sadness over Nancy's disappearance and recalling her kindness in offering him homemade tamales while he worked. As the days passed without a breakthrough, the community grew anxious, and the family endured agonizing uncertainty. Search and rescue teams, utilizing helicopters, canine units, and ground searchers, scoured the rugged foothills and dry riverbeds surrounding El Faro Road, but found no trace of Nancy. A critical analytical breakthrough occurred when investigators examined Nancy's telephone records. They discovered that an attempted 911 call had been placed from her cell phone at exactly 12:17 in the morning on Saturday, May 5th. The call had lasted for 0 seconds, indicating it had been abruptly terminated or blocked almost immediately after dialing. This provided investigators with an exact time stamp of when the assault had occurred. Shortly thereafter, the State Crime Laboratory delivered 2 major pieces of information. First, the laboratory had isolated an unknown male deoxyribonucleic acid profile from the bloody handprint on Nancy's pillow. However, a search of the combined deoxyribonucleic acid index system returned no matches, meaning the perpetrator had no prior felony record. Second, Sean Bloom voluntarily provided his deoxyribonucleic acid, which did not match the profile on the pillow, officially clearing him of suspicion. Faced with a stalling investigation, the sheriff's office decided to deploy a highly sophisticated investigative technique, geofencing. This process involves securing a warrant to obtain anonymous location data from Google for any mobile devices that were active within a specific geographical boundary during a defined time frame. When the geofence data returned, investigators analyzed the coordinates surrounding Nancy's cottage. Amidst the devices belonging to the sleeping wedding guests, they identified a single mobile device that had pinged near Nancy's studio at 1:33 in the morning and again at 1:52 in the morning. Investigators secured a subsequent warrant to identify the subscriber associated with that device. The name returned was Carlo Fuentes Flores. This revelation shocked the investigators. Fuentes Flores was a family man with a wife and a young daughter, possessing no criminal record in either the United States of America or Mexico. He was widely regarded by his employers and clients as a quiet, tidy, and exceptionally polite professional. Yet, the electronic footprint placed him at the crime scene in the middle of the night. To understand his potential motive, investigators obtained a warrant for Fuentes Flores' Google search history and mobile phone contents. The digital analysis revealed a dark, deeply compartmentalized double life. Beneath his polite exterior, Fuentes Flores harbored an obsession with older women, frequently searching for cougar, pornography, and escorts. Furthermore, his phone contained numerous self-recorded videos of sexual encounters with various women, revealing a highly active, hidden lifestyle of excessive drinking and sexual exploitation. To secure an arrest, investigators needed to match his deoxyribonucleic acid to the profile on a bloody pillow without alerting him to their suspicion. A specialized surveillance team followed Fuentes Flores as he went about his daily routine. When he sat down for lunch with his wife at a local restaurant, an undercover officer watched as he drank from a glass bottle of Coca-Cola. As soon as the couple departed, the officer retrieved the discarded bottle from the table. The laboratory analysis was swift and conclusive. The deoxyribonucleic acid from the Coca-Cola bottle was an identical match to the profile found in the bloody handprint on Nancy's pillow. On the morning of the interrogation, Detective Cole and his partner, Dave, sat across from Carlo Fuentes Flores in a small interview room at the Templeton Sheriff's Station. They began by asking routine questions about his painting work at Paradise Ranch, prompting him to confirm his familiarity with the property and his interactions with Nancy. Fuentes Flores maintained his polite, cooperative demeanor, reiterating that he had only heard of her disappearance from his boss. When Detective Cole asked directly if he was involved in her disappearance, Fuentes Flores denied it calmly. At that moment, the detectives shifted their strategy, informing him that they possessed conclusive forensic evidence placing him in Nancy's bedroom on the night she vanished. The psychological shift was visible. Fuentes Flores' posture slumped, his breathing became shallow, and he confessed that he had made a mistake. However, he initially attempted to minimize his actions, fabricating a story that he had returned to the property in the middle of the night to retrieve a ladder for a job the next day. He claimed that as he was backing up his truck, he accidentally struck Nancy, who had walked up behind him in the dark. He claimed he carried her into her apartment to help her, where she subsequently collapsed and died. The detectives remained skeptical of this explanation, pointing out that an accidental collision would not account for the extensive blood spatter in the bedroom or the foreign deoxyribonucleic acid on her bedding. Under continued questioning, Fuentes Flores' narrative dissolved. He admitted that he had entered her apartment with the intent to assault her, believing she had been flirting with him when she offered him tamales. He admitted that he struck her to quiet her, raped her, and subsequently suffocated her with her pillow to prevent her from identifying him. In a surprising moment, Fuentes Flores offered to lead the detectives to Nancy's remains. He was placed in an unmarked police vehicle, directing a convoy of investigators east from Paso Robles toward the remote, arid landscape of the Carrizo Plain. The search in the fading light was difficult. Fuentes Flores struggled to identify the precise location in the vast, open terrain stopping at several spots without success. Finally, as doubt began to creep in, Detective Cole noticed a small, unnatural mound of rocks off the side of the dirt road. Upon approaching the rocks, investigators discovered Nancy's skeletal remains, which had been significantly scattered by wild animals. The sight of her remains, left in the cold wilderness, brought a profound sadness to the search team, contrasted by anger at the callousness of her killer. Fuentes Flores fell to his knees, weeping and asking the detectives to tell his young daughter that he was sorry for his mistake. Upon returning to the station, Fuentes Flores wrote a formal letter of apology to Nancy's family, and he was officially charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances of rape and burglary. While in jail awaiting trial, Fuentes Flores maintained a plea of not guilty. His defense team launched a vigorous effort to suppress his recorded confession, arguing that because he was a native Spanish speaker, his Miranda warnings should have been administered in Spanish, despite his fluent English. Conversation during the interrogation and in recorded phone calls with his wife from jail. Following a detailed hearing, the judge denied the motion, ruling that the detectives had fully respected his constitutional rights and that he had clearly understood and waived them. Faced with the prospect of a trial and the potential for a death sentence, Fuentes Flores agreed to a slow plea arrangement. Under this legal framework, the defense waived a jury trial, allowing the prosecutor to present the complete investigative file directly to the judge, who would make the final determination of guilt. In January of 2022, the judge reviewed the extensive evidence, including the geofencing data, the deoxyribonucleic acid matches, and the recorded confessions. The judge found Carlo Fuentes Flores guilty of first-degree murder with the special circumstances of rape and burglary, sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The conviction brought a somber sense of closure to Amanda and her family. At Nancy's memorial service, held at a beautiful vineyard near her home, hundreds of community members gathered to celebrate her life. Today, Amanda continues her mother's passion, riding Montana through the same golden hills of Paso Robles, keeping the memory of her mother's generous spirit and deep faith alive. The triumph of justice and forensic science. When we examine these two tragic cases side by side, we can observe several profound truths about the nature of criminal behavior and the tireless efforts of the men and women who work to uphold justice. Both Corey Richins and Carlo Fuentes Flores operated under the delusion that their public identities, one as a successful, grieving mother and entrepreneur, the other as a polite, humble craftsman, would shield them from suspicion. They compartmentalized their dark desires, whether driven by financial desperation and romantic fantasy or by hidden, violent sexual obsessions, believing they could outsmart the communities they inhabited. Yet in both instances, their downfalls were secured by the meticulous application of modern forensic techniques. In Utah, the science of toxicology. Expose the presence of street-level fentanyl, dismantling the narrative of a sudden natural death, while digital forensics uncovered the damning text. Messages that established a clear timeline of intent. In California, the emerging technology of geofencing allowed investigators to construct a virtual net over a remote property, identifying a single anonymous device that shattered a killer's anonymity, while deoxyribonucleic acid analysis provided the irrefutable physical link to the crime scene. These cases stand as a testament to the dedication of local law enforcement, who refused to accept superficial explanations and pursued every lead with integrity and empathy. They also served to honor the memories of the victims. Eric Richins, a devoted father whose love for his children remains protected, and Nancy Woodrum, a woman of deep faith and kindness whose legacy continues to inspire her family and community. In the end, these narratives remind us that while evil may seek to hide behind a mask of normalcy, the persistent pursuit of truth and the power of human justice will ultimately prevail. The duality of the human psyche and the illusion of grief. In the study of criminal psychology, one of the most compelling and deeply disturbing phenomena is the concept of the curated persona. Human beings are inherently social creatures, capable of constructing elaborate outward-facing identities that project warmth, success, empathy, and moral rectitude. Yet, beneath these carefully manicured surfaces can lie a starkly different reality, driven by cold calculation, desperation, and an absence of empathy. To a criminal psychologist, the contrast between who a person claims to be and what their actions reveal is where the truth resides. This analysis explores two distinct cases of tragic loss, deceptive behaviors, and the painstaking, brilliant work of modern law enforcement. Both narratives unfold in scenic, tight-knit communities where such dark acts seem entirely out of place. The first takes us to the snow-dusted peaks of Summit County, Utah, where a wife and mother of 3 boys attempted to write her own narrative of grief while hiding a trail of financial devastation and lethal betrayal. The second leads us to the sun-drenched vineyards and oak-lined roads of Paso Robles, California, where a beloved community pillar vanished from her sanctuary, prompting an investigation that pushed the boundaries of modern forensic technology. By analyzing these cases, we do not merely seek to recount the details of crime. Rather, we examine the subtle psychological fractures, the behavioral anomalies, and the tireless dedication of the investigators who refuse to let these mysteries remain unsolved. In doing so, we honor the memory of the victims, Eric Richins and Nancy Woodrum, and observe the slow, inevitable triumph of justice over deception. Part 1. The Silent House in Summit County. In the early morning hours of March 4, 2022, the quiet mountain town of Kamas, Utah, was shattered by a frantic call to emergency. Services. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, Corey Richens dialed 911, her voice trembling as she reported that her 39-year-old husband, Eric, was unresponsive, cold to the touch, and not breathing. The emergency dispatcher, trained to handle high-stress situations with calm precision, instructed Corey to begin cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The audio recording of that call captures the rhythmic, desperate countdown of the chest. Compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Count out loud so I can hear you, the dispatcher urged, attempting to keep the caller focused on the life-saving measures. Within minutes, first responders, including paramedics, firefighters, and sheriff's deputies, arrived at the sprawling, beautiful residence. The scene inside the master bedroom was chaotic yet quiet. Eric Richens lay on his back on the floor beside the bed. Paramedics immediately took over, utilizing an automated chest compression machine that filled the room with a rhythmic, mechanical hum. Despite their rapid response and tireless efforts, there was no pulse. Eric Richens, a robust, athletic, and highly successful business owner, was pronounced dead at 3:58 in the morning. For the deputies on the scene, the initial moments of an unexpected death investigation are critical. They must balance compassion for a newly bereaved spouse with the objective necessity of documenting the scene. In the body-worn camera footage captured by the responding officers, Corey Richens can be seen pacing, visibly distraught, trying to process this sudden tragedy. When questioned about the timeline of the evening, Corey explained that she and her husband had been celebrating a significant milestone. Her real estate business, which focused on flipping residential properties, had just secured a major financial victory. To celebrate, she made a specialized mixed drink for Eric in their bedroom around 9 o'clock the previous evening. Corey further explained that one of their 3 young sons, who were 10, 9, and 6 years old, had woken up suffering from night terrors. In her effort to soothe him, she had gone to the child's bedroom and fallen asleep beside him. When she woke up in the middle of the night and returned to her own bed, she reached out for Eric and realized he was ice cold. The officers, seeking to understand Eric's medical history, asked if he had any underlying health conditions. Corey and her mother, Lisa Darden, who arrived shortly after the call, mentioned that Eric suffered from Lyme disease, which he had contracted during a hunting trip. They suggested he received weekly allergy shots and frequently looked pale or complained of chest pains. Additionally, Corey mentioned that Eric occasionally took a tetrahydrocannabinol gummy to help him sleep, though she was unsure if he had done so that evening. As a medical examiner and detectives prepared to transport Eric's body, a paramedic noted a surprising amount of blood around the victim's mouth, which began to discharge during the chest compressions. This unusual physical symptom led to an initial working hypothesis among the first responders that Eric might have suffered a sudden, catastrophic brain aneurysm. To his family and friends, this explanation was difficult to accept. Eric was an avid outdoorsman, a hunter, who traveled as far as Africa for big game expeditions and a dedicated youth. Soccer coach who maintained excellent physical fitness. The idea that his life could end so abruptly at 39 years old seemed impossible. Part 2. The Two Faces of Corey Richins. To understand the psychological complexity of Corey Richins, one must examine her background and the deep-seated ambitions that drove her. Growing up, Corey's family moved frequently, relocating every 2 or 3 months due to her parents' work in construction. While she described her childhood as comfortable, it was far from wealthy. As a young woman, Corey worked for her aunt's cleaning company, scrubbing the bathrooms of the massive, luxurious mansions in the affluent resort town of Park City, Utah. It was during these years that a powerful ambition took root. Corey dreamed that she would not always be the one cleaning these beautiful homes. She wanted to be the one who owned them. She wanted to prove to the world, and perhaps to herself, that she could rise above her humble beginnings and occupy the upper echelons of society. When Corey met Eric Richins, sparks flew immediately. Eric was significantly older, established, and came from a well-respected family that owned a successful cattle ranch in Summit County. He was a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, having served a 2-year mission in Mexico City and had built a highly profitable stonemasonry business called C&E Masonry. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and Corey became pregnant with their first child. However, the union faced immediate hurdles. On the day of their backyard wedding, just as Corey was preparing to walk down the aisle, Eric's mother presented her with a prenuptial agreement. The document was clear. Eric's masonry business would remain solely his, and Corey would only benefit from it in the event of his death while they were still married. Though deeply upset, Corey signed the document, and the marriage proceeded. Over the next 4 years, the couple welcomed 3 sons to the outside world. They were the picture of the perfect American family. They lived in a beautiful home, took lavish vacations, dined at expensive restaurants, and possessed significant financial resources. Eric was a deeply devoted father, coaching his son's soccer teams and building a life centered on family and outdoor adventure. Eventually, Corey sought more than the life of a homemaker. In 2019, she launched K. Richins Realty, a real estate and house flipping business. Within 2 years, she was managing 15 renovation projects. Simultaneously, on the surface, she was an incredibly successful, self-made businesswoman. Yet, immediately following Eric's death, the facade began to crack. The morning after a gathering of friends and family at the Richins' home to reminisce about Eric, a bitter dispute erupted. Corey, anxious to locate Eric's will, hired a locksmith to drill open the safe in the garage. Eric's sister, Amy, arrived at the house and was outraged to see the locksmith. A screaming match ensued. During this confrontation, Amy dropped a devastating piece of information. Eric had secretly altered his estate planning documents in 2020. He had established a private trust, named his sister Katie as the trustee and executor, designated his 3 sons as the sole beneficiaries, and placed the family home into the trust. When Amy declared to Corey that the house was no longer hers, Corey's frustration boiled over. According to police reports, Corey physically assaulted Amy, punching her in the face and neck. She was subsequently arrested and later pleaded no contest to misdemeanor assault. The tension between the 2 families was painfully obvious at Eric's funeral. Corey stood isolated on one side of the chapel, while Eric's family stood on the other, refusing to interact. Within weeks of the burial, Corey filed a civil lawsuit disputing the validity of the trust. Part 3. The Author of Grief. In the face of rising suspicion from her husband's family and the ongoing legal battles, Corey chose a highly unusual path for a grieving widow. She decided to write a children's book. Corey claimed that as she struggled to help her 3 young sons cope with the devastating loss of their father, she searched extensively for literature that could explain the concept of death to young children. Finding nothing that met her needs, she decided to create her own book titled Are You With Me? The book, which she self-published using a ghostwriter, is structured in 2 parts. The first half is written from the perspective of a young boy who wonders if his deceased father is still present in his life, watching his soccer games and supporting him from afar. The second half of the book shifts to the perspective of the deceased father, offering comforting assurances that he is indeed still there, clapping and cheering for his son, even if he cannot be seen. Corey dedicated the book to her amazing husband and wonderful father, featuring an illustration of their family of 5, complete with their dog. In March of 2023, 1 year after Eric's death, Corey embarked on a public relations campaign, appearing on local television and radio programs to promote the book and share her journey as a grieving widow. To the viewers of programs like Good Things Utah, Corey appeared to be a courageous, vulnerable young mother doing her best to navigate a terrible tragedy. She spoke movingly about the difficulty of the nighttime hours and the importance of establishing routines to help children process grief. The hosts praised her strength and thanked her for creating a resource that would help other families. However, the public narrative took a sudden, shocking turn just days after her television appearance. The broadcasting station received an anonymous email, written in all capital letters with multiple exclamation points. The message was simple and chilling. She killed her husband. Part 4. The Toxicological Revelation. While Corey was promoting her book of comfort and healing, state investigators had been quietly compiling evidence that painted a far more sinister picture of Eric's death. The official autopsy and toxicology reports had finally been completed, and the findings were staggering. The chief medical examiner determined that Eric Richens did not die of a brain aneurysm, Lyme disease, or any natural causes. His cause of death was acute drug intoxication, specifically the toxicology. Screen revealed a massive concentration of fentanyl in his system, 5 times the lethal dosage. Crucially, the medical examiner noted that the drug detected was not medical-grade fentanyl, such as that prescribed by a doctor or administered in a hospital setting. Instead, it was illicitly manufactured fentanyl, the type produced by drug cartels and sold illegally on the street. The revelation that Eric had died of a massive fentanyl overdose sent shockwaves through those who knew him. Eric did not use illicit drugs. He was a health-conscious, athletic father who actively avoided drug culture. With the cause of death established as a homicide, the Summit County Sheriff's Office launched a full-scale criminal investigation. Detectives secured a search warrant for the Richens residence, looking for any trace of illicit substances. While their physical search of the home did not yield any actual fentanyl, they seized Corey's electronic devices, including her cell phone and computer. During the search, Corey maintained her innocence, expressing shock and confusion over the toxicology results. She even called the chief medical examiner directly, asking detailed questions about the chemical compounds found in Eric's stomach. In a recorded phone call, she asked about acetylfentanyl, a specific variant of the drug. The medical examiner explained that fentanyl is an impurity commonly associated with illicitly manufactured street drugs rather than pharmaceutical products. Corey's defensive posturing did little to deter the investigators, who were starting to look closely at her personal and financial life. Part 5. The burden of debt and deception. As detectives analyzed Corey's financial records, they discovered a hidden reality that stood in stark contrast to her public success. Corey's real estate business was not thriving. It was collapsing under the weight of astronomical debt. At the time of Eric's death, Corey was in the process of attempting her most ambitious project yet, the purchase of a massive, unfinished luxury estate in Midway, Utah, valued at nearly $3 million. She envisioned converting the mansion into a premier wedding and event venue, estimating it would require millions of dollars in additional renovations. To fund this and other projects, Corey had turned to hard money lenders, securing short-term, high-interest loans that carried extreme financial risk. She was deeply in debt, owing millions of dollars to over 20 different creditors. In her desperation to secure capital, Corey had engaged in a series of highly deceptive financial practices. In 2020, Eric discovered that Corey had forged his signature to secure a $250,000 line of credit against the family home, a property that Eric solely owned. This discovery had devastated Eric, shattering his trust in his wife. He immediately consulted a divorce attorney and took steps to alter his estate planning, ensuring that his sister Katie would control his assets and that his children would be the sole beneficiaries of his trust. Though Eric and Corey ultimately stayed together and attended marriage counseling, the financial deception continued. The investigation revealed that Corey's financial desperation had also impacted those closest to her. Her best friend, Chelsea Barney, had entrusted Corey with $45,000 as a down payment for her first home. Corey had promised to facilitate the transaction, claiming she would secure the loan while Chelsea paid the monthly mortgage. However, Chelsea eventually received foreclosure notices and discovered that Corey had never properly filed the deed. The home was foreclosed upon. Chelsea's family was evicted, and their hard-earned life savings were entirely gone. Similarly, a young family, Taryn and Alec Wright, purchased a remodeled home from Corey's company, only to discover extensive, hidden toxic mold and water damage behind the newly painted walls. The family became severely ill, lost their home to foreclosure due to the compounding costs of temporary lodging, and filed a lawsuit against Corey, who denied any prior knowledge of the issues. As investigators build a timeline of the months preceding Eric's death, they discovered that Eric had fallen violently ill on multiple occasions and that he had openly expressed suspicion that his wife was attempting to poison him. In 2019, during a vacation to Greece, Eric had ordered a non-alcoholic drink due to medication he was taking for Lyme disease. After taking a single sip, he became violently ill. He called his sister Katie from the hotel room, stating that he believed Corey had tried to poison him. Later, on Valentine's Day of 2022, just weeks before his death, Corey purchased a specialty bagel sandwich from a local diner and left it for Eric with a loving note. After eating one bite of the sandwich, Eric suffered a severe allergic reaction. He was forced to use his son's epinephrine auto-injector, take a massive dose of antihistamines, and sleep for several hours. When he woke up, he sent a text message to a close friend stating, "You almost lost me this time. I think she might have poisoned me." Part 6. The Drug Link and the Secret Life. To secure an indictment for murder, investigators needed to establish a direct link between Corey Richins and the illicit fentanyl that ended Eric's life. A newly appointed lead detective, Jeff O'Driscoll, decided to review the phone records of all parties involved. In doing so, he identified 3 primary numbers that Corey communicated with constantly: her husband, her mother, and a woman named Carmen Lauber. Carmen Lauber was a house cleaner who had worked for Corey's real estate business. She also possessed a lengthy criminal record involving drug offenses. Recognizing her as a potential source of illicit substances, Detective O'Driscoll conducted a targeted search of Carmen's trash, discovering drug paraphernalia. This provided the necessary probable cause to secure a search warrant for Carmen's residence. During the search of Carmen's home, deputies made 2 significant discoveries: an illegal firearm, which Carmen was prohibited from possessing as a convicted felon, and a copy of Eric Richins' obituary taped to her vanity mirror. Facing the prospect of decades in federal prison for the firearm and drug charges, Carmen agreed to cooperate with the prosecution. She revealed to Detectives that Corey had contacted her on 2 separate occasions in early 2022, specifically requesting strong pain medication, which she referred to as the Michael Jackson stuff. Carmen admitted that she procured fentanyl pills from a local dealer named Robert Crozier and delivered them to Corey. According to Carmen, after the first delivery, Corey contacted her again, stating that the pills were not strong enough and requesting a more potent dosage, which Carmen subsequently provided. The timing of these transactions was highly incriminating. Phone records showed an exchange of 30 text messages between Corey and Carmen on Valentine's Day, the very day of the poisoned sandwich. Furthermore, another delivery of pills occurred on February 26, just days before Eric's sudden death. As investigators dug deeper into Corey's digital communications, they uncovered a completely separate motive for the crime: a long-term, passionate extramarital affair. For several years, Corey had been involved with a 41-year-old handyman named Robert Josh Grossman. Josh was a combat veteran who had served in Iraq and was living a transient lifestyle, often couch surfing or working for free in exchange for lodging and support from Corey. The text messages between Corey and Josh, which spanned months, revealed a deeply emotional and romantic connection. While Josh expressed intense, sometimes naive affection, Corey used the relationship to project her dream of a future where they would live together at the Midway Mansion, operating the event center and raising children. Crucially, on the Wednesday before Eric's death, Corey sent a text to Josh, pleading with him to be patient. "Hang in there until Friday," she wrote. "Life is going to be different, I promise." Friday was the day Eric Richins died. Part 7. The Jailhouse Letters and the Courtroom Battle. On May 8, 2023, Corey Richins was arrested and charged with 1 count of aggravated murder and multiple counts of possession of controlled substances with the intent to distribute. While held without bail at the Summit County Jail, Corey's penchant for writing would once again prove to be her undoing. During a routine search of her cell, corrections officers uncovered a handwritten 4-page letter hidden inside her belongings. The letter, which began with the phrase "walk the dog," was addressed to her mother, Lisa. In the letter, Corey instructed her mother to contact her brother, Ronnie, and direct him to provide false testimony. She laid out a specific narrative for Ronnie to deliver, suggesting he should claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico through ranch workers. The prosecution immediately filed charges of witness tampering, arguing that the letter was a clear attempt to fabricate evidence and influence witnesses. Corey's defense team argued that the letter was merely a draft of a fictional manuscript she was writing, but the court found the explanation highly implausible. The preliminary hearings and subsequent bail hearings presented a mountain of circumstantial and forensic evidence to the public. Among the most damaging revelations were Corey's internet search history recovered from her phone. In the days and weeks following her husband's death, and after learning that law, enforcement was investigating. Corey had searched for terms such as luxury. Prisons for the rich in America. Can cops uncover deleted messages on iPhone? If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as, and what is a lethal dose of fentanyl? In May of 2024, Corey's original defense attorney withdrew from a case due to a conflict of interest. She was replaced by two experienced public defenders, Kathy Nestor and Wendy Lewis. Shortly after their appointment, Corey released a recorded audio statement to the media asserting her innocence and claiming she had only ever sought to protect Eric. When the trial finally began in the small mountain courthouse near Park City, the courtroom was packed with media, family members, and curious onlookers. The jury consisted of 8 members, 6 men and 2 women. The prosecutor, Brad Bloodworth, delivered a direct and powerful opening statement detailing Corey's staggering debt of over $4,500,000, her unhappy marriage, her affair, and her calculated decision to murder her husband for financial gain. The defense countered by playing the emotional 911 call, arguing that the state's case was entirely circumstantial and lacked any direct forensic evidence showing how the fentanyl had actually been administered to Eric. The prosecution's case lasted 13 days and featured powerful testimony. Eric's sister, Katie, recounted the devastating phone call from her father on the morning of Eric's death. Carmen Lauber took the stand, weeping as she admitted to her role in procuring the lethal drugs and expressing her desire to take accountability for her actions. The most anticipated witness was Corey's former lover, Josh Grossman. Visibly uncomfortable and emotional, Josh confirmed their affair and the authenticity of the romantic text messages. He recounted a chilling conversation that took place in the weeks following Eric's death. While sitting in Corey's car, she had suddenly asked him if he had ever killed anyone during his combat service in Iraq and how it had made him feel. In a stunning tactical decision that shocked the courtroom when the prosecution rested its case, the defense team immediately rested as well, calling 0 witnesses to the stand. They believed the prosecution had failed to meet its high burden of proof. However, the jury thought otherwise. After deliberating for just under 3 hours, the 8 jurors returned a unanimous verdict, guilty of aggravated murder and all remaining charges. Foreperson Laura later shared that the deliberations were intense and thorough, but the overwhelming combination of financial motive, the affair, the toxicological evidence, and the highly incriminating search history left no doubt in their minds. Justice had finally been served. For Eric's family, the verdict brought definitive closure, though the pain of his absence remained. The 3 young boys who had lost their father to violence and their mother to a life sentence were adopted by Eric's sister, ensuring they would grow up surrounded by love and the memory of their devoted father. Part 8. The Shadow over Paso Robles. While the mountain valleys of Utah were coming to terms with the conviction of Corey Richens, another community nestled along the scenic central coast of California, was remembering its own journey through tragedy and the extraordinary application of forensic science. Paso Robles, California, is a place of breathtaking beauty, known as El Paso de Robles, or the Pass of the Oaks. The region is characterized by rolling hills, majestic valley oaks, grazing cattle, and world-class vineyards. It is a peaceful getaway town halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco, where life moves at a deliberate, gentle pace. Yet on May 5, 2018, a dark shadow fell over this idyllic landscape. The focal point of the tragedy was a secluded property on El Faro Road, known as Paradise Ranch. The property featured a beautiful, remodeled Victorian home with wraparound porches shaded by a massive willow tree. It was owned by 62-year-old Nancy Woodrum. Nancy was a fixture in the Paso Robles community. She owned and operated a popular hair salon downtown called The Strand, where she worked alongside her daughter, Amanda. Nancy was known for her warmth, her generous spirit, and her deep devotion to her faith as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. She loved horseback riding, finding peace and solace in nature, and harbored a deep hope for a peaceful future. Nancy's life had been marked by great resilience in the face of profound personal tragedies. Years earlier, she had lost an infant son, Christopher, who died at just 10 days old. Later, her teenage daughter, Amy, passed away after a long battle with cystic fibrosis. Finally, her husband, Robert, a local contractor who had helped her build Paradise Ranch, died suddenly of a heart attack. Through all of these devastating losses, Nancy maintained her strong faith and her positive outlook on life. To help manage the property after her husband's death, Nancy began renting out the large main house as a vacation rental while she lived in a small, cozy guest cottage on the property. On the weekend of May 4, 2018, a large wedding party checked into the main house at Paradise Ranch. The bride, her bridesmaids, and their families had traveled to the area for a beautiful vineyard wedding at a local winery. Nancy, welcoming as always, greeted the guests, gave the bride a warm hug, and explained that she would be staying nearby on the property if they needed anything. The wedding festivities proceeded smoothly, but on Saturday, May 5, Amanda grew deeply concerned when her mother failed to show up for a scheduled Bible study. Such an absence was entirely uncharacteristic of Nancy. Amanda asked a neighbor to go to the property and check on her. The neighbor arrived to find the door to Nancy's cottage wide open, the television blaring, and no sign of Nancy. Amanda rushed to the property. As she entered her mother's cottage, she was met with a scene that filled her with immediate panic. The home was tidy, with Nancy's purse, car keys, cell phone, and iPad sitting on a bench. However, the bedding was completely missing from the bed, and there was a dark, disturbing stain on the carpet. Upon closer inspection of the walls, Amanda saw what appeared to be blood spatter She immediately dialed 911. Part 9. The Crime Scene and the Mysterious Trail. Reserve Detective Clinton Cole of the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office was off duty on that Saturday afternoon when he received a call from his sergeant. He was instructed to immediately head to El Faro Road to assist with a highly suspicious missing persons case. When Detective Cole arrived at Paradise Ranch, the gravity of the situation was immediately apparent. Responding deputies briefed him on the scene inside the cottage. There were no signs of forced entry, but the physical evidence pointed to a violent struggle. Inside the bedroom, investigators identified 2 large blood stains on the floor. There was blood spatter on the headboard, on a nearby cabinet, and on the back wall. A beige pillow sitting on the bed also bore significant blood stains. Detective Cole immediately realized that Nancy had not simply wandered away. She had been violently assaulted and taken from her home against her will. The peaceful vacation rental had instantly transformed into an active, high-stakes crime scene. As the forensic team began processing the cottage, a crucial discovery was made. Several miles away, an officer with the California Highway Patrol contacted the Sheriff's Department to report that he had located several items of bedding and clothing discarded along the side of La Ponza Road, approximately 6 to 7 miles from Nancy's house. Detectives rushed to the location and recovered a gingham print sheet, a pillow, a dress, a pair of shorts, and a shirt. The physical appearance of the bedding matched the remaining items in Nancy's cottage, and the fabric bore heavy blood stains. When shown the clothing, Amanda confirmed through tears that the items belonged to her mother. The evidence suggested a terrifying scenario. Nancy had been wrapped in her own bedding and transported away from her home, either severely injured or deceased. With more than 20 wedding guests staying in the main house, just yards from Nancy's cottage, investigators faced an incredibly complex task. Every single guest was a potential suspect or a vital witness. Detectives began conducting extensive interviews with the members of the wedding party. The process was logistically challenging and emotionally taxing for the guests, who had gathered for a celebration only to find themselves in the middle of a homicide investigation. To the frustration of the detectives, despite the close proximity of the main house to Nancy's cottage, separated by only a single wall, not a single guest reported hearing anything unusual on the night of the disappearance. The bride explained that she had gone to bed around 11:15, put in her earplugs, and slept through the night. However, investigators identified one wedding guest whose timeline of the evening was initially unclear. He had not attended the rehearsal dinner with the rest of the party, claiming he had stayed behind the property. His hesitant and uncooperative demeanor during initial phone conversations raised immediate red flags for the detectives. Determined to resolve the discrepancy, Detective Cole and his partner traveled to the guest's residence in Northern California, arriving unannounced. Upon face-to-face contact, the man's attitude changed. He became highly cooperative and apologized for his previous tone. His wife provided photographs from her phone showing that he had, in fact, attended the dinner, entirely clearing his timeline. The guest also voluntarily provided a DNA sample to assist the investigation. Part 10. The disgruntled contractor and the estranged son. With the wedding party cleared, detectives expanded their focus to other individuals who had recently accessed the property because Nancy had been preparing to sell Paradise Ranch to focus on her missionary work. Several local contractors have been performing repairs on the estate. Among the names discovered in Nancy's personal notes was Sean Bloom, a general contractor who had recently worked on the house. Amanda informed detectives that her mother and Sean had engaged in a highly contentious dispute over the quality of his work and the timeline of his payments. Nancy had ultimately fired him, refusing to issue payment until the property closed escrow. Sean Bloom was brought in for questioning. He did not attempt to hide his dislike of Nancy, and text messages on his phone confirmed he had threatened legal action against her. However, after a thorough interview, Sean voluntarily provided a DNA sample, which was sent to the state crime lab for analysis. Another potential avenue of investigation involved Nancy's estranged son, Chad. Amanda explained that her brother had harbored significant anger and resentment toward their mother and her religious beliefs. The relationship had deteriorated to the point where they had not spoken face-to-face in 5 years, and Nancy was barred from seeing Chad's children. Yet, on the night before her disappearance, Nancy had reached out to Chad via text message, attempting to find common ground. He was the last person to exchange messages with her. When contacted by detectives, Chad expressed a deep distrust of law enforcement, refusing to come to the station or provide a voluntary DNA sample. Suspicious of his resistance, detectives placed him under surveillance. After observing him consume several beers at a local establishment, deputies stopped his vehicle and arrested him for driving with an open container. While the minor charge was eventually dismissed, investigators successfully secured the discarded beer bottles from his truck, extracting his DNA for testing. Within days, the crime lab returned the results. Both Sean Bloom and Chad were completely excluded. The unknown male DNA profile recovered from the bloody handprint on Nancy's pillow did not match either man, nor did it match any profile in the national database. The investigation had hit a devastating wall. Part 11. The virtual fence. With all immediate suspects cleared and no active leads, the detectives refused to give up. They decided to employ a cutting-edge, highly sophisticated investigative tool that had rarely been used in the state of California. Geofencing. Geofencing is a digital technology that allows law enforcement, with a court-approved warrant, to request location data from Google for a highly specific geographic area and time frame. Because almost all modern smartphones, whether Apple or Android, utilize Google location services, Google records the physical coordinates of devices as they move through the world. Detectives utilized the timeline established by Nancy's phone records. At 12:17 on the night of her disappearance, Nancy's phone had initiated a call to 911 that lasted 0 seconds before being abruptly disconnected. This provided an exact 3-minute window of when the crime occurred. Investigators drew a virtual perimeter around Nancy's cottage and requested the device identifiers for any phone active within that boundary between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning. When the data finally arrived from Google, detectives began the meticulous process of filtering out the known devices belonging to the wedding guests. Suddenly, a single unrecognized device identifier caught their attention. The data showed a cell phone active inside Nancy's studio cottage at exactly 1:33 and 1:52 in the morning, the precise time frame when Nancy disappeared. Detectives secured a secondary warrant to obtain the subscriber information associated with that specific device. In November of 2018, the results arrived. The phone belonged to Carlo Fuentes Flores. The name was immediately familiar to the investigators. Carlo Fuentes Flores was a local painter who had been hired to paint the deck and trim of the main house at Paradise Ranch in the weeks prior to the disappearance. To those who knew him, Carlo was a mild-mannered, hard-working family man. He was a devoted father who spoke constantly of his daughter and had worked successfully in the local trades for over 20 years. He was known as polite, professional, and entirely nonviolent. When detectives had interviewed him early in the investigation, he had been warm and cooperative, even recounting how Nancy had kindly given him tamales and read Bible scriptures with him while he worked. However, a forensic examination of Carlo's digital life revealed a dark, hidden psychology. Beneath his respectable exterior, Carlo harbored deep-seated, unusual fantasies. His search history was filled with searches for older women, specifically using terms like cougar and sexy lingerie. Nancy Woodrum was approximately 15 to 20 years older than Carlo, aligning with the specific patterns found in his search history. Furthermore, investigators discovered that Carlo frequently hired escorts and had recorded numerous videos of himself engaging in sexual acts with various women. He was living a double life, a dedicated family man by day, and a deeply troubled, secretive individual by night. Part 12. The Apprehension and the Truth. To secure an arrest, detectives needed absolute proof. They initiated a covert surveillance operation, following Carlo as he went about his daily routine. When Carlo stopped at a local restaurant for lunch with his wife, investigators watched him drink from a glass Coca-Cola bottle. The moment he left the restaurant, detectives recovered the discarded bottle and rushed it to the state DNA laboratory. The results were definitive. The DNA from the Coca-Cola bottle was an identical match to the unknown male DNA found within the bloody handprint on Nancy's pillow. On the morning of his arrest, Carlo was brought into the interrogation room at the Templeton Sheriff's Station. Detective Cole and his partner conducted the interview with quiet, methodical precision. Initially, Carlo maintained his innocent persona, claiming he only worked on the property and had no knowledge of Nancy's disappearance. Detectives slowly began to present the evidence, establishing that he knew the layout of the property and Nancy's living arrangements. When Detective Cole directly asked Carlo if he was involved in her disappearance, Carlo denied it. The detectives then revealed that they possessed undeniable DNA evidence, placing him in Nancy's bedroom on the night she vanished. The psychological shift was instantaneous. Carlo's posture collapsed, his breathing became shallow, and he began to weep. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "I want to be honest with you guys." Carlo initially attempted to frame the death as a tragic accident. He claimed he had returned to the property in the middle of the night to retrieve a ladder for a job the next morning. As he was backing his truck up, he claimed he accidentally struck Nancy, who had walked outside to investigate the noise. He claimed he carried her back inside to help her, where she subsequently collapsed. Detectives immediately challenged the plausibility of his story. If it was an accident, why was there blood spatter on the headboard and walls? Why was her bedding missing? Under intense, steady pressure, the fabricated story fell apart. Carlo admitted that he had gone to the property with the specific, dark intention of sexually assaulting Nancy. He entered her cottage while she slept, violently assaulted her when she woke up, and subsequently raped her. To prevent her from identifying him, Carlo took the beige pillow and suffocated her. He then wrapped her body in her own bedding, loaded her into the bed of his truck, and drove away into the night. When asked where Nancy's body was, Carlo made a surprising offer. "I would like to take you." Part 13. The Carrizo Plain and the End of the Journey. In the custody of the detectives, Carlo directed the caravan of police vehicles east away from the fertile hills of Paso Robles and toward the stark, desolate wilderness of the Carrizo Plain. The journey lasted over an hour, winding through barren, dusty terrain on the border of Kern County. As they searched the vast, open plains, Carlo struggled to identify the exact location. The landscape was homogeneous, and the passage of 6 months had altered the vegetation. He stopped at several different coordinates, growing increasingly frustrated and emotional. Detective Cole, shivering in the cold desert wind, began to fear that they would never find her. Yet, as he scanned the terrain, he noticed a small, unnatural pile of rocks situated several yards off the road. He pointed to the rocks and asked Carlo if they looked familiar. Carlo looked over, collapsed to his knees, and began to weep. "Oh my God, yes," he sobbed. Detectives approached the pile of rocks and discovered human skeletal remains, partially scattered by local wildlife. The skull and major bones were recovered. Carlo had not even taken the time to bury Nancy. He had simply placed her body on the ground and covered her with a few local rocks before driving away. Upon returning to the station, Carlo wrote a formal letter of apology to Nancy's family, expressing his deep regret for the senseless tragedy he had caused. Though Carlo's defense team attempted to suppress his confession by claiming he did not fully comprehend his Miranda rights in English, the judge denied the motion, noting that Carlo spoke excellent English in his daily life and in recorded phone calls to his wife from jail. In January of 2022, on the first day of his trial, Carlo chose to enter a slow plea, allowing the judge to review all of the evidence and find him guilty of first-degree murder with a special circumstance of rape. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The community of Paso Robles gathered at a local vineyard to celebrate Nancy's beautiful life. Amanda and her daughter continue Nancy's beloved tradition of horseback riding, riding her favorite horse, Montana, through the scenic hills, keeping her memory alive in the land she loved. Part 14. The Psychology of Deception. When we examine the cases of Corey Richins and Carlo Fuentes Flores side by side, we observe striking similarities in the psychological mechanics of criminal deception. Both individuals possessed a remarkable ability to compartmentalize their lives, maintaining respectable, even admirable public personas while harboring dark, destructive motivations. Corey Richins sought to control her narrative through the power of the written word. By writing a book on grief, she attempted to position herself as the ultimate victim, leveraging her maternal role to deflect suspicion and exploit her community's sympathy for financial gain. Her deception was active, creative, and highly manipulative. Carlo Fuentes Flores, conversely, utilized a passive, quiet persona to mask his violent impulses. To his family and employers, he was the humble, hardworking craftsman. Yet, his internal world was dominated by secret desires and a complete disregard for the life of a woman who had treated him with nothing but kindness. In both instances, it was not a single dramatic piece of evidence that broke the case, but the slow, methodical accumulation of details by dedicated investigators. In Utah, the combination of financial records, cell phone searches, text messages, and a compromised associate brought down a calculated killer. In California, a novel technological breakthrough combined with old-fashioned physical surveillance and DNA matching solved a mystery that seemed destined to remain cold. The resolution of these cases serves as a profound reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. The families of Eric Richins and Nancy Woodrum faced unimaginable grief, yet they stood firm in their pursuit of the truth, supporting law enforcement and ensuring that the memories of their loved ones were honored. Through their efforts and the tireless work of the justice system, the truth was revealed, proving that even the most carefully constructed deceptions will eventually crumble in the light of justice.